So I'm a professional filmmaker and an ethnographic researcher. So for those that don't know what that means, ethnographic research means spending time with people in their own environments to find out how people live and think, and it usually involves documenting those findings on camera. So it's like documentary filmmaking basically. And projects that I do can be for medical research or for social policy or to help with the design of products or services. When I'm not doing that, I like to make non-commissioned films and music videos like the one you saw earlier, the Damn film, and run the occasional sort of training filmmaking workshop. So I've been asked to speak about activism and community, that's what the name of this event is, like my colleagues here, which made me ask, what do those words mean to me? How involved am I in activism and community? So I opened my dictionary, also known as the internet, and I found the following definitions, so I'm going to bring them up. Okay, so this is what the dictionary says about activism. It's a doctrine or practice that emphasizes direct, vigorous action, especially in support of or opposition to one side of a controversial issue. I thought, aha, I get it. And then I looked up community, and I got this. Community is a group of people who live in the same area, such as a city, town or neighborhood, or a group of people who have the same interests, race or religion, etc. So, I have to confess, I'm not sure how much direct, vigorous action I get up to, of a constructive kind anyway, or how much I identify with any single particular community. So why do I make these films? Why do I make these films? I make films to satisfy a sort of a personal urge to create and to express how I perceive the world in an aesthetic way. And because I'm interested in people's stories as a whole, as part of an overarching human tapestry. So I suppose I'm interested in that primarily to feel less alone and to bring life to life. But also because I believe it leads to mutual understanding or empathy, which is really important if you also believe in a healthier, happier world for everyone. So I suppose I do have a political agenda, albeit with a small lowercase p. However, I'm constantly aware of the dangers of alienating the very people whose attention I'm trying to get by being too vigorous and too flatly one-sided, or by just preaching to the converted. So trying to strike the balance can be difficult for me when working with commissioners, particularly their PR departments, who may be less interested in nuanced stories and engaging with a wider audience, and they're more interested in simply ticking boxes and being seen to be getting their literal message across word for word. Now I've a few minutes left, so I'm going to give you 3 real-life examples of striking the right balance and the different tensions involved. The first is about my side organisation, Film for Humanity. So we run free filmmaking workshops for everyone, and particularly for people from marginalised demographics. Marginalised backgrounds, and the resulting films have been screened at local cinemas and on BBC and ITV online. And our first workshop a few years ago also marked 70 years since the Battle of Cable Street. And that's where 500,000 protesters marched in London against the British Union of Fascists, who did eventually disband. And because of this, my partner was keen on calling our fledgling group Film Against Fascism. But to me, the word against was too negative, too oppositional, and the use of the word fascism was too political with a big capital P. I felt rather than bringing people on board, it would push regular people away. So I flipped it. Against became for, and the esoteric fascism became the more inclusive humanity. Calling ourselves Film Humanity might still seem a bit hippie-ish, but it was a happy compromise. We got our funding, we brought in a broad mix of participants, and we screened to a large audience. We got on the BBC and ITV websites, so it worked. Okay, the second example I'm going to talk about is the film you saw earlier, my hip-hop-umentary, as I like to call it. Now, I do have family in the region, and I have a real interest in the social situation there, but it was art more than politics that drew me to this particular subject for the film. If I didn't genuinely like Dam's music, I mean the music as a whole, not just the message, and if I wasn't interested in the guys as people, I probably wouldn't have made this particular film about them. You know, I might have found something else to do. And that's because in the same way that they approach making their music, I wanted to make something artful too. You know, the art was really important to me, something that expressed how I felt in an aesthetically creative way. Dan were just happy for the free publicity, but it worked out well for all of us. The film was shown at several events and festivals, and we're still in touch as friends. However, when I was editing the film, there were one or two sort of light or blasé comments in the footage which, when taken out of context, may have seemed insensitive or off-putting to some viewers. So I really had to ask myself whether or not those comments should make the final cut. And that's a typical dilemma for any documentary filmmaker when you're editing. You have to ask whether what people say is really what they mean, or is it really reflective of their personalities? And in this case, I don't think those kind of off-the-cuff comments really were, you know, when they were being taken out of context. And you also have to ask whether that by including certain moments, you may unjustly skew a film and end up alienating your wider audience. And in this case, again, I thought it would. So those comments didn't make the final cut, which I think made for a better film. Okay. My last example is about my main professional job, which is ethnographic research. And I'm going to show you a 60-second clip from a film called More Snakes Than Ladders, which was commissioned by the National Consumer Council, and it looked at the barriers and consequences faced by people who work full-time but they're trapped on a low income. It's an 8-minute film, so that's just sort of a 60-second, 90-second excerpt. So I'm proud of this film. It was twice shown at the House of Commons and distributed as a DVD with this booklet about all the people interviewed. But I think it could have been better. I think it could have been stronger. I think we should have better targeted the people who could actually make a difference. And we should realise that you do that by understanding and engaging with those people's points of view. I'm talking about the audience, the people who aren't already on board. So generally speaking, most people's point of view is, well, I've got my own problems to deal with, so why should your cause matter to me? So you have to show them. You can't just say, well, I can't just say because it's sad or because it's wrong. You have to show people how it materially or tangibly affects them and what they can do about it. So with the National Consumer Council film, the client agreed to add some statistics relating to things like rising food and fuel costs, which you saw, but they stopped short of saying what that meant to the viewer or explaining why someone else's problem might become theirs too. So with the bit about food costs, I would have added the amount that the NHS spends on dealing with preventable diet-related diseases, such as diabetes and obesity, as well as mentioning the cost to the economy of having a section of the workforce who are unable to work. Those massive costs are ultimately paid by taxpayers, and it's those numbers which make for the attention-grabbing headlines that we see in the mainstream press. They bridge the divide between them, or that group or community, in this case low-income workers, and us, meaning everybody else, the kind of mainstream readership. They show how we're all in it together as one community. And that's what it comes down to. I feel that if you want people to consider an issue, you also have to consider how they feel, how they'll respond, and how to show that your cause affects them too, and sort of on a deeper level. So as a final thought, This might seem obvious, but it's worth sort of stating. People are generally more attracted to sort of positive thinking than negative. We like doing things that make us feel good. We try to avoid things that make us feel bad. And that's why a video like this one I'm going to show you at the end has 36 million hits. It's just a shame that it didn't have a hashtag linking to a social issue at the end too, leading to something important. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.